Bandar Abbas, Iran, 11 kilometers west of Shahid Rajaee Port, 2:10 in the morning. 84 U.S. Army Delta Force operators were moving in from the water, the air, and the outer service roads around Bandar Abbas's Crimson Dockyard. Inside the complex, 312 Iranian forces defended fuel farms, missile cranes, dry docks, and encrypted logistics servers that controlled almost $80 billion of naval supply capacity. The U.S. Army had 90 minutes to break the dockyard and leave before Iranian reinforcements sealed the coast. Crimson Dockyard mattered because it fed nearly every major Iranian naval movement in the Strait of Hormuz. Tanker fuel, anti-ship missiles, spare engines, radar parts, drone munitions, and convoy schedules all passed through its warehouses and command rooms. Iranian forces believed the site could not be taken in one night because it sat behind double fences, seawalls, blast doors, radar towers, and 4 fast response barracks linked by internal roads. The dockyard also had layered weapons. Watchtowers held PKM machine guns and DSHK heavy guns. The seawall had Zu 23-2 anti-aircraft guns pointed low for boat defense. Patrol boats carried AK-74 rifle teams and RPG-7 gunners. 2 hardened bunkers protected the server block and the main fuel control station. Iranian forces believed any raid would be detected minutes early and crushed before attackers reached the inner docks. The assault plan split the U.S. Army Delta Force into 4 elements. Alpha had 22 operators and would hit the western fuel farms with M4A1S OPMOD 2 rifles, C4, and thermite. Bravo had 20 operators and would breach the server block from the south using MK18 CQBR carbines, shaped charges, and det cord. Charlie had 18 operators and would seize the dry dock cranes with MK48 Mod 0 and M249 SAW support. Delta had 24 operators and would cut the northern barracks road, destroy patrol boats, and hold the extraction lane with M24OB machine guns, Carl Gustaf M3 rounds, and Javelin missiles. At 2:16, the assault began. 2 low boats reached the seawall. 4 helicopters passed far offshore and never crossed the dockyard itself. Their job was decoy noise. Alpha placed ladders on the outer wall. Bravo crawled through a drainage cut under the southern fence. Charlie moved from a hidden truck drop on the container road. Delta fired the first suppressed shots and dropped 2 tower guards at the north gate. Iranian forces reacted in pieces, not as one force. A patrol near Pier 3 saw movement and opened fire with AK-74 rifles. Charlie answered with short bursts from a MK48 Mod 0. The patrol fell back behind forklifts. Alpha cut through the first fuel yard gate with DT cord. Bravo reached the server annex door, found it locked, fixed a shaped charge on the hinges, and blasted the door inward. In less than 4 minutes, the outer ring was broken in 3 places. At 2:18, Alpha sprinted between fuel tanks and pump houses. 2 Iranian forces teams tried to set up a PKM machine gun near a pipeline trench. Alpha hit them first with M4A1S OPMOD 2 fire, then planted thermite on 3 pump control boxes. Flames started inside the wiring and spread through the panel racks. An alarm finally sounded across Crimson Dockyard, but the Dockyard command post still thought the main attack was coming from the harbor. Bravo was already inside the server block. The first corridor turned right toward a steel cage room. 3 Iranian forces defenders fired from behind filing cabinets. Bravo dropped one with a MK18 CQBR burst, rolled a flash grenade down the hall, and rushed the room before the smoke cleared. A breacher cut the server cage with a linear charge. 2 operators pulled backup drives from locked bays, while another stacked C4 on the cooling units and main data cabinets. Charlie reached the dry dock apron at the same moment. A crane operator tried to swing a suspended engine crate into the open lane to block them. Charlie fired through the glass cabin with M4A1 SOP Modi 2 rifles, then pushed left under the crane legs. A DSHK heavy gun opened from the maintenance shed. Charlie answered with an AT-4 round. The shed wall blew apart. The heavy gun went silent. 4 operators climbed the crane access stairs and seized the control cabin. At 2:20, Delta hit the North Barracks Road. A truck loaded with 16 Iranian forces was turning out of Bay 2 when Delta opened with M24 OB machine guns. The windshield shattered, the truck swerved into a barrier and stopped. 2 men tried to dismount with RPG-7 launchers. Delta cut them down before they could aim. A Javelin missile then struck the first patrol boat warming engines at Pier 1. The blast rolled across the water and forced every guard post to look north. That was the break the U.S. Army needed. Alpha crossed the second fuel lane while most Iranian forces shifted fire toward the pier. A locked maintenance bunker blocked Alpha's path to the main fuel control station. A breacher pressed C4 on the latch side. The door blew inward. Alpha cleared the room in 11 seconds and found the central pressure boards. Thermite bars went onto valve controls, pump relays, and emergency shutoff motors. The fuel farm was still standing, but it was already dying from the inside. At 2:22, Dockyard Command finally understood this was a full raid. Iranian forces from the eastern barracks rushed west in 2 squads and tried to retake the server block. Bravo met them at the stairwell. The first defender fell on the lower landing. The second tried to fire an RPG-7 inside the corridor and hit the wall. The blast stunned his own squad. Bravo pushed down the stairs and finished the fight with MK18 CQBR fire. One U.S. Army operator took a round through the shoulder and stayed in the stack. Charlie had the cranes, but the dock itself was still active. 6 Iranian forces at Dry Dock 2 tried to swing a mobile launcher into position. Charlie used a Carl Gustav M3 recoilless rifle and hit the launcher before it aligned. The blast broke the rear axle and set off secondary fires in missile crates nearby. Then Charlie turned the seized crane. They dropped a 12-ton engine block across the center service road, cutting the fastest route between the eastern barracks and the fuel farms. At 2:24, Delta saw headlights from the coast road. Iranian forces reinforcements were arriving from an outer marine post 7 kilometers away. Delta had prepared for that. 2 operators fired a MK19 grenade launcher down the road approach. The first burst hit the lead pickup, yet the second burst hit the second vehicle beside it. Burning trucks blocked the lane. Surviving defenders ran for a drainage ditch. Delta raked the ditch line with M24 OB fire and kept the road closed. Inside the server block, Bravo reached the upper control room. This room carried encrypted docking schedules, convoy routing tables, and naval fuel transfer codes. Iranian forces had locked the core racks behind a second blast cage. A breacher set det cord along the frame. The charge snapped the lock points. Bravo dragged out 3 hardened drives and 1 communications case. Then they placed 18 pounds of C4 across the main racks, backup batteries, and cooling pipes. The timers were set for 14 minutes. At 2:26, Alpha moved toward Tank Group 4, the largest fuel cluster in Crimson Dockyard. Iranian forces were waiting there behind concrete separators with PKM machine guns and AK-74 rifles. Alpha dropped flat, split left and right, and fired from 3 angles. One operator used an M249 SAW to pin the center gun pit. Another fired a Carl Gustav M3 round into the separator wall. Concrete burst across the firing line. Alpha rushed the gap and cleared the position at close range. 3 more thermite charges went onto transfer manifolds and pump couplings. The Dockyard was now fighting 4 battles at once. Iranian forces around the fuel farm tried to hold valves and pipe lanes. Iranian forces near the barracks tried to break through the blocked road. Iranian forces in the south wanted the server block back before the data went dark. Commanders at the harbor edge were still trying to launch surviving patrol boats. The U.S. Army Delta Force kept all 4 fires burning, so no single defense could recover. At 2:28, Charlie pushed from the crane deck into the fabrication hall. This was the last route linking the dry docks to the missile storage sheds. 8 Iranian forces defenders fired from welding bays and tool lockers. Charlie answered with short MK48 Mod 0 bursts and precise M4A1 SOP MOD 2 shots. A steel roll door at the back slammed shut. A breacher laid a linear charge at the base. The door folded inward. Charlie moved through and placed C4 on 2 heavy lift control units and the rail carriage that fed the dock cranes. Delta then shifted 2 men to the pier edge and swept the waterline. A second patrol boat tried to back away under smoke cover. Delta hit it with an AT-4. The rocket struck near the stern and killed the engine. 1 crewman jumped into the water. 2 others fired wildly with AK-74 rifles before rounds from Delta ended it. A third boat farther out tried to support with a DSHK heavy gun, but an overhead drone fed the angle, and Delta walked M24 OB fire across the mount until it stopped. At 2:30, 14 minutes into the operation, Bravo triggered the first demolitions inside the server block and pulled south toward the fuel lane crossroad. The blast crushed rack rows, shattered cooling lines, and blacked out half the Dockyard network. Cameras froze, electronic locks failed, interior lights died in 3 buildings. Iranian forces started moving by flashlight and phone light. That helped the U.S. Army because every dark hallway now favored the side already inside. Alpha heard the server blast and pushed harder. And the main fuel control station sat behind a concrete wall and blast shutter. 2 defenders on the roof fired down with AK-74 rifles. Alpha dropped 1 with a MK11 Mod 0 shot from 140 meters. The second ducked behind an air unit. Another operator fired 2 rounds from a M4A1 SOP Mod 2 and ended the threat. A shaped charge broke the shutter brackets. Alpha entered the station and planted the last thermite packs on the pressure regulators and digital flow boards. At 2:32, Iranian forces launched their strongest counterattack. 42 defenders from the eastern barracks and workshop alley charged toward the center road behind 2 armored utility loaders. They fired PKM machine guns through the loader forks and tried to force a path to the fuel station. Charlie had the high angle from the crane cabin. Delta had the north road. Bravo had just reached the crossroad. All 3 elements opened together. MK48 Mod 0 fire tore into the first loader. A Javelin missile smashed the second. Bravo cut down the trailing line as it broke apart. The counterattack failed in less than 3 minutes, but it cost both sides. 1 Bravo operator was hit in the leg. 1 Charlie operator took shrapnel in the face and arm. Iranian forces left 19 dead around the wrecked loaders and 11 more wounded behind tool carts and barriers. The center road was now blocked by burning metal, broken tires, and bodies. No organized movement from the barracks could pass through it. At 2:34, Charlie reached the missile crane control nest and found the Dockyard reserve power switchboards. This was not the main target, but it mattered. Charlie set thermite on the switchboards and the hydraulic control bank for Dry Dock 1. When the charges burned through, both cranes locked in place and the reserve grid failed. Across Crimson Dockyard, pumps stuttered, floodlights died, and the last powered repair lines shut down. By 2:36, Alpha reported the fuel control station secure. Bravo reported the data core destroyed and 4 intelligence items captured. Charlie reported the dry docks disabled and the center road blocked. Delta still held the north lane, but Iranian forces were massing beyond the outer checkpoints. The U.S. Army had broken the dockyard. Now they had to leave before larger coastal units arrived with heavier weapons and trapped them against the water. Extraction began at 2:38. Alpha pulled west in pairs, setting final timed C4 charges on 2 fuel manifolds and 1 tanker loading arm. Bravo moved south with the captured drives and communications case packed into 2 waterproof bags. Charlie fell back from the crane deck after dropping 1 last engine carriage onto a repair track. Delta was last out, covering every lane with M24 OB fire and MK19 grenades, while the other 3 elements crossed the seawall. At 2:40, the biggest blast of the raid hit. The fuel control station failed first. Pressure surged through damaged lines. Tank Group 4 erupted. Fire raced through open couplings and ruptured manifolds. Seconds later, Alpha's final charges blew the west transfer lane apart. A second blast hit Pier 2 when burning fuel reached a loading trench. 2 surviving Iranian patrol boats cut lines and fled east through smoke. They left the dockyard without command links, fuel control, or crane access. Iranian reinforcements reached the outer gates at 2:44, 34 minutes into the operation. They found the north road blocked by wrecked trucks, the south network center gutted, the center service lane cut by crane debris, and the fuel farms burning beyond control. Delta fired the last covering bursts from the seawall, then boarded the extraction boats. Offshore aircraft never entered the inner airspace, but their AIM-120 AMRAAM and AIM-9X Sidewinder cover kept Iranian helicopters away until the boats cleared the harbor mouth. By 2:50, the U.S. Army Delta Force was 9 kilometers offshore. Behind them, secondary blasts continued through the dockyard. Fuel towers collapsed. Dry dock rails twisted. Server rooms burned out. Loading cranes froze above empty berths. Harbor crews tried to isolate the fires, but the control systems were gone. At 3:40, 90 minutes after the first shots, Crimson Dockyard was no longer a working naval logistics hub. The final count was exact. The U.S. Army lost 3 operators killed and 9 wounded. Iranian forces lost 97 killed, 88 wounded, and 54 captured after being cut off in damaged buildings and pier shelters. Destroyed or crippled equipment included 3 patrol boats, 2 dry dock cranes, 1 mobile missile launcher, 6 fuel transfer manifolds, 4 pump houses, 2 reserve power banks, 1 server block, and 1 central fuel station. Total dockyard damage was estimated at $80.4 billion. Iran believed Crimson Dockyard could keep its fleet moving through any crisis and survive any short raid. What actually happened was that 84 U.S. Army Delta Force operators split the complex, broke its systems, and left before the defense could become one fight. Iranian forces had walls, guns, bunkers, and numbers. What they did not have was 84 U.S. Army Delta Force operators willing to wreck an $80 billion dockyard in 90 minutes.